Hello. Good morning. Welcome back to Thompson Hine's Coffee Chat series. My name is Cassandra Borchers. I'm a partner in the Investment Management Group and chair of our Blockchain and Cryptocurrencies Group. Today, we will be discussing AI, artificial intelligence, and fund management, practical applications, governance insights, and future trends for board trustees. While AI can potentially enhance decision-making, streamline operational efficiencies, and support regulatory compliance, it is certainly not without concern and requires careful application, oversight, and training. I'm delighted to have with us Joyce Li, who's going to join us for this discussion. Joyce is the CEO and Chief AI Strategist at Averanda Partners. She is a seasoned investor, board director, entrepreneur, and AI strategist. With nearly 2 decades of experiencing managing multi-billion-dollar investments and serving on boards, Joyce now advises boards of directors and business leaders on the development of AI strategies and governance frameworks. Very valuable. Thank you for being here with us today, Joyce.
It's great to be here.
So we are hoping that today's discussion will be interactive. If you have a comment or question, please enter that in the chat box, which I believe will be on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You can set that either to everyone or to just the panelist if you're concerned about anonymity. But go ahead and enter in your questions, and we'll try to address those as we move through the program. We hopefully will have a few minutes at the end as well. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. The first topic we want to touch upon is AI in fund management. Talk about practical uses in risk assessment, portfolio optimization, due diligence, and predictive analytics. This section, we're really focusing on the investment advisor's perspective, but also what the board of trustees needs to do to kind of drill down on what those investment advisors are doing, and those would be the advisors to a registered fund. So right now it appears within our clients, you know, the trustees were all sort of in the opening phases of predictive analytics, artificial intelligence. I know it's been around for a long time, but it has really, really boomed recently, as we've all been seeing. So with respect to the Board of Trustees, you know, a lot of ways that you gather information from the investment advisors to the funds, typically through the 15C materials, which is an annual renewal. We've had several clients who have added questions about AI to those materials. Sometimes you'll have the advisors come in not only at the time of their 15C, but they might do some other quarterly reporting. Depends on the size of the board, whether or not it's a series trust, and how many advisors there are to the funds in the trust. But typically that's a good opportunity to interview the advisors and ask about their plans. We just saw a KPMG survey came out that suggested 73% of the respondents, which were all investment advisors, plan to start adopting AI within the next 18 months. I would say a lot of them are already using it already, or and if they say they're not using it or they don't have any plans to use it, you know, you might perhaps want to drill down on that a little bit further. There are also quarterly compliance questionnaires that could address the AI. And I think the other thing with respect to the boards are paying attention to websites or other presentations that the advisors are presenting. Now, obviously, a lot of that day-to-day work and sort of monitoring will fall upon either the CCO or your legal team, but as a board collectively, you know, you do have an oversight role. You're obviously not going to, get really into the weeds, but as a first step, at the very least, understanding what the advisors to the funds are doing and how they're using AI. The SEC is out there looking for these things, scraping data off of filings, and so it would be great to not be surprised by something. And Joyce, maybe you can talk to us about what you're seeing with fund managers. And it seems to be a little more prolific with respect to private fund managers. but how have they been using AI to help with their investments?
Yeah, absolutely. And that would, by the way, Cassandra, that was a great overview and summary about the 15C process and where the AI comes in. And let me address your question briefly first, and then I'll give some examples later.
That would be great.
So I see most of the early stage AI use, especially Gen AI, because we all know the predictive AI has been around for a while, but Gen AI is relatively new. So I see a couple of areas people are putting it in use. One is pipeline development for investments. So
Mm.
idea scraping, summarizing SEC filings to find interesting mentions of certain themes. And then secondly, doing the unstructured data analysis, such as, visit to malls or documents submitted by a building for their renters and that sort of things used to take a huge amount of manual labor and time to go through, clean up the data, and put them into, a digestible spreadsheet for analysts. Now it can be done by Gen AI tools within minutes. The other
Wow.
areas that we see a lot of usage already is on the risk management, surprisingly, because a lot of risk these days can be based on text analysis rather than just based on past numbers. And that really gradually and also significantly actually expand the level of understanding of specific risks, especially across different in the private sector, but also across different asset classes. And lastly, I will just mention one thing that also sees a lot of usage, and that's comes a little bit later, but got adopted really quickly, is on the asset allocation side of things. So if you think about asset allocators, they're now using Gen AI to think about manager selection and also compliance monitoring.
Oh,
And yeah, and then sometimes, of course, we mentioned risk management. That's also a added lens to look at risks across the board. So as a manager, definitely is very important to understand where you are at in terms of your adoption, your experimentation, and also why and how you plan to use AI, and just not simply just jump on the bandwagon for the sake of being on trend. So that's definitely a lot to unpack, but I'll stop here and maybe later we'll bring up some examples.
oh, great. Well, I mean, that's fascinating, and it does have a lot of promise. Uh, with regards to predictive analytics, AI, like I said, they do hold a greater promise for improving efficiency. I hear that with respect to compliance, and it's such a big job. However, it also can be error prone. Can be either generating data based on inaccurate, incomplete, maybe old data. There's this, it can be faulty, it can hallucinate. Maybe I don't quite understand how the hallucination happens, but you probably do. So I know there are new tools being developed out there, and obviously AI is being improved, but are there any examples you can tell us that might help or improve upon more accurate inputs, outputs, what have you?
Absolutely, Cassandra. That's almost number one concern or pushbacks when we talk to investors or companies, ask them why they hesitate in using AI. So how can AI be more reliable? I will just share some new emerging solutions, and then maybe we'll see more even better solutions over the next months to come, because this field definitely is evolving very fast. So in terms of hallucination, a lot of it has something to do with data quality. And for example, these days we have RAG techniques and also knowledge graph techniques. By the way, I understand trustees are not technical. You don't have to understand the words. I just want to make sure that you understand people are doing this research to ground AI models and to doing analysis on quality data. And
Hmm.
also for investment firms in particular, a lot of firms are interested in using their private data, such as private meeting notes, company analysis, and models to do these type of analysis feed into the Gen AI model. And this can be done in two ways. One is just use a fine-tuned model hosted internally, which is obviously completely private, or
Yeah, that gets to the privacy concern. We'll talk about more about
correct,
that
correct,
later. Yes.
correct. Or if you're not one of the big funds, you have limited budget, you can definitely take advantage of some of the cloud infrastructure players who set up these type of security and privacy guardrailed workspaces on their cloud so that you almost like you can imagine you rent out a private room and this room has all the privacy measures and data security measures around it so that you don't get your private data uploaded, for example, back to the AI model. And then you get your analysis more grounded into the domain knowledge base that you can have higher confidence in. Of course, I have to say, there's really no way that AI can be 100% accurate in any cases, even though we throw in all these tools added to improve the accuracy and also transparency. What needs to be done, and everyone is adopting this mindset, is we have to be accepting that there's a human in the loop, especially in areas where the decisions or the downside or upside risk would be significant. You have to have human in the loop so that you can explain the output, you can review and evaluate the output, and even audit some of the AI system over time.
That's fantastic. I think some people we've all seen, kind of cringy news reports about people who forgot to, you know, check the check the final product for accuracy. Well, the flip side of this coin, so you had mentioned people jumping on the bandwagon. So the flip side of usage, the SEC is also hyper concerned about AI washing. So they issued an SEC investor alert in January of 2024. We'll talk in a few minutes about also a proposed rule they did last summer. They have been, sweeping investment advisors. They're out there, as I mentioned, scraping data. First, it looks like they're focusing on investment advisors and broker dealers. Then in March of this year, they actually, announced two settlements against investment advisors. And while the fines weren't huge, it's obviously you don't want to have your name in the headlines. It's interesting because one of these advisors in particular had had an exam in 2021. They have been using AI back then and promised to fix some things, and they didn't. So the SEC came back, and that's kind of you know, a double hit when you've also not done the things you said you would do in your last exam. But it was interesting because the SEC called it a facade of innovation and reliability. So they are very concerned about investment advisors and others overstating, misleading in these cases in their Form ADV. There were also violations of the new advisor marketing rule that came into effect in the last few years. So, the takeaways from that, from all the speeches that Gary Gensler has been giving, these investor alerts, videos, is that they are out actively looking for it. So the important takeaways are, be transparent. And this is for, once again, for the investment advisors, but really it relates to anything you're going to put in those fund documents. So it's transparency, reviewing marketing materials with increased vigilance, and then proactive and engagement of adopting, best practices. If you're a firm that's using AI, once again, not overstating, no sort of puffery, because yeah, that's just as bad. If you're trying to invest or attract investors with these false claims, there's already rules in place to prevent against that.
Absolutely. I would just add one thing is just keep in mind this is moving very, very quickly. And
Yes.
a lot of times you send out a survey or questionnaire to the advisors and come back and say they don't use AI, so I don't have to worry about it. I would just say it probably will be different next quarter. One example I will just highlight, and then this would be something that maybe trigger you to think about this differently. Is if you think about all the tools, softwares, a mid-size or a just a regular investment firm will have, things like a CRM system where store their customer information, like a Salesforce, and investor team may use FactSet or Bloomberg as investment tools, what have you. And your RFP team may have a certain tools that they use to put material together. And all these, by the way, are launching AI-enabled functions. So
Oh,
you may think your vendors are not AI providers, but guess what? Almost all these software providers now are AI powered. And going forward, it's going to be more and more. So to the extent that saves operational or change operational cost structure or introduce new risks such as privacy or maybe make sure that you have to have data and AI use policy in place. All these considerations may be actually closer than you think. Um,
yes. Well, with that, let's move on to governance and compliance. So, opportunities and considerations to ensure regulatory adherence, uh, governance improvement with respect to just tackling this new era of AI. So, maybe you could talk to us about how conflicts of interest are being addressed, and is AI benefiting clients and investors, or just the fund manager?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think we know the final answer yet, but this is a topic that's almost like you have to hold it up front in every conversation. So I would say why, how, and what are very important. I'll get it started. I know, Cassandra, you have some thoughts on this as well, and I'll let you chime in afterwards. So the why is it's once again like ask the advisor why they have to use AI in certain things, and therefore get a grasp of whether this is productivity improvement, which leads to cost structure or cost, maybe later fee negotiation questions, and or this is a competitive advantage like enhance investment process, then that also goes into some other related conversations. And who means that really who's doing it. Is it a in-house specifically, or is it a combination of in-house and third-party vendor? And that's also triggers other considerations as well. And if we think about the first principle level of conflict of interest between advisors and their clients, and obviously the investors, we can approach it from these three angles. If the cost structure is declined because of use AI, then should that be passed through to investors ultimately? If the investment
Very valid
performance
point.
is going
Yeah.
up, then of course that benefits, right? But then does that introduce some oversight risk that has not been addressed? Then that leads to reputational risk that will eventually hurt investors. So those are the questions I know trustees are very good at asking, but it's having a framework, thinking through that principle of resolving conflict of interest is very important.
Absolutely. And to that point, so the SEC back in the last summer, in the summer of 2023, introduced a rule around conflicts of interest and predictive analytics. Predictive analytics also encompasses AI. They've got a defined term for covered technology in there. And so this is focused on investment advisors, broker dealers who are using it in investor interactions. I don't think this rule has not been adopted yet, but I don't think that's the last one that we're going to see on this topic. Um, so, the question there, the primary question is, right, who benefits? Because there is a conflict of interest, and how is the AI modeled? Is it optimizing benefits for the investors? An investment advisor does have a fiduciary duty. So the rule focuses on getting these firms to eliminate or neutralize the effect of conflicts of interest with these covered technologies. Also, there's, as with everything, a written, compliance policy and procedure component if these predictive analytics are used with investor interactions, and also some record keeping requirement. So that really, a lot of times in these proposed rules, it lays out what the SEC's concerns are. And there are existing rules in place with respect to, the requirements for broker dealers and investment advisors. And that's what the SEC is out examining on right now. They're looking at those Form ADVs, they're looking at those marketing materials. They haven't specifically referenced fund documents yet, but both with respect to greenwashing and this issue, I can tell you we've had clients, and if there's some mention of machine learning or other key phrases in their registration statement, the staff has been digging in and answering a lot of questions, asking a lot of questions, and uh, you know some of these it ties up the registration process, and or we've had clients abandon certain projects. There's a suggestion, and I suppose it's a valid question, is an AI a sub-advisor, for example? Could that agent, even though it's not an entity or a human being, there's obviously oversight. Well, I shouldn't say obviously. There should obviously be oversight from the investment advisor, but these are the questions and comments that the staff is already out there making. So it's become a part of the landscape, and I surely it's not going anywhere. Okay, so you mentioned earlier there were pushbacks to the use of AI. What are the top pushbacks that you're hearing or seeing?
Yeah, I think we mentioned the data quality. Am I having enough data if I want to derive my investment insights to utilize AI? And that's number one. Number two is, can I really trust AI when AI still hallucinates? We also adjust some of that, and especially when when future models are more and more fine-tuned to domain knowledge, I think that would also become less a concern. However, we do have the third one is like, is the AI too expensive for advisors to use? Because it sounds like everyone is posting like billions of dollars spent on AI. We are cost conscious. How can we use AI? The good news there is the big spending seems to concentrate in the infrastructure players who put together big data centers and big AI specific data centers as well. But for users of AI technology, there are, in fact, the key benefit of Gen AI, this whole wave, is the ease of use and the accessibility. You can, for example, pay for commercial license of certain AI models, or a sort of data, for example, data filtering tools, or in-house private type of data search, knowledge-based search tools with very limited budget. So that's why the AI is getting adopted so quickly, because of that. So I would just say be very, very open-minded about what's going on in the industry, and especially look at adjacent industries. By the way, I always feel like the funds are not we're not inventing the wheels. We can see other regulated industries, how they are adopting AI with a very reasonable budget, and then learn something from it. I would just highly encourage to be open-minded.
That's excellent advice. I know we're at 11:25, so I said I was going to go to our speed round. Um, but just before that, we do that, maybe we could take a moment about data protection because we have talked about it a little bit. So there's public AI, there's proprietary AI. Obviously, cybersecurity is an issue. You want to keep that. I think the key concern from the SEC standpoint is making sure that there's no personal data being fed out to some sort of public AI. And, you know, what I know we talked about solutions. Just real quickly, what was your comment around privacy and data protection?
Yeah, I would say ask your advisor whether they have a data use policy and also AI policy across the board, especially to vendors. The one place that I see a lot of pitfalls is when people assume the vendors will will require opt-in for data be sent back to AI models. But in fact, it's not the case. We recently had a LinkedIn fiasco where people find out that LinkedIn actually send your data to their AI model unless you opt out. And this happens to a lot of newer AI features by your existing
Mhm.
vendors. So definitely make sure that that advisor would have to address this ASAP with the policies and compliance in place. And yeah, so I would say technology wise, we are seeing a lot of solutions, but at the end of the day, it's all about human and policy and also complies to those policies.
Oh, great. All right. So we developed this little speed round, is
Yeah.
what we're calling it. But good and bad uses of AI actually in the boardroom. So we're gonna propose something and then both give our yes or no answer. And we have not practiced this, so we don't know what the other one is going to say. Um, so the first use of AI would be for summarizing board materials.
You want to go first?
I would like you to go first.
Okay. I would say no, because I do feel there's a lot of nuances in the board materials for the board directors to dig into and then ask questions. I feel like that got lost in summarization by AI tools.
My answer is also no, for similar reasons. And, you just, quite frankly, and we say this in any summary of deliberations with respect to the 15C, you don't know which points different directors might focus on different things. And because of that, and because it would create, I think, a horrible record to have a summary out there, uh, I also say no.
Awesome.
All right, great. Preparing board materials. So I'll take the lead on this one. This, quite frankly, I don't think we're there yet. I mean, maybe there's not, but the actual materials that go into the board book, obviously you've got multiple people reviewing them, right? They're provided by different people. So you've got the advisors' reports, the ones that the administrators, transfer agent put together, the memos that legal put together. We're certainly not using AI for our legal memos. And then materials are provided by the different advisors. So I'm not aware of a present use for AI in preparing those board materials.
I largely agree. I'll add one point. I do see some success in using AI to help preparing presentations of those materials.
Hmm.
So, for example, does the materials come across as intended? Is there any sort of scenarios where some of the questions that might get asked once the audience hear these type of points? And I do see that. Of course, you have to ensure the privacy and data that's secure and private, not getting sent back to the AI models. We said that many times on this call.
Yes. And actually, maybe that ties back to the last one. I mean, we do often prepare like a summary of specific data that's presented in the board materials. Maybe there's an acceptable use for it there, but obviously oversight, human oversight. Okay. Okay. Attending board meetings like a co-pilot, this would be for the purpose of, I think, recording the meeting and perhaps generating a first draft of the minutes. I'll let you go first on this one, Joyce.
Yeah, I would say, well, assuming privacy and security are in place, I do think that has some benefit to it. But in terms of voicing in opinions or chime in as a co-attendant, then definitely no. So it's not so much about co-pilot, it's more like assistant.
That's a good point. And yes, my primary concern would be privacy and data protection. Um, I'm reluctant to have any board meetings recorded, so I'm not there yet either.
Awesome.
All right. That we're right at 11:30, so if anyone has any questions, if you'd like to put them in the chat, we can address those quickly. Otherwise, we'll let you get back to your day. And if you do have any follow-up questions, you can feel free to reach out to either one of us, and we can address those. So seeing none, this will conclude our today's chat. Today's program was recorded also and will be available on the Thompson Hine YouTube channel. I want to thank all of you for attending today and extend a very special thank you to Joyce Li for sharing your expertise and insights. When the webinar does end, you will be prompted to take a survey and provide us feedback. Thank you. And if you do have any other suggestions for a future coffee chat, please let us know that as well.
Thank you very much, Cassandra.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day to all of you.